Good morning and good afternoon, all my dear friends who are eagerly waiting for this panel discussion on Reimagine the Internationalization post-COVID-19. This particular panel discussion will focus on challenges and opportunities of the remote internship, university perspective on the value of internship post-COVID-19 and their importance in the students' curriculum. The financial impact of COVID-19 on universities and programs of studies. These are the three subtopics where panel members are going to discuss. Today's 60 minutes is planned like this. I will take 5 minutes of introduction. In the round one, each panel member will get 5 minutes in the first round to make initial points or remarks about the said theme. In the second round, each panel member will get approximately 3 minutes to make their comments on the points proposed in round one by other panel members. In the round three, where we have planned approximately 15 minutes, discussions among the panel members, it's a random one. Whoever wants to ask, they can raise the hand, they can take the podium. And questions from the audience, we are going to take it. We have 5 panel members today. I'm going to introduce one by one. I will be moderating the session. My name is Professor Karunakar Kotegar. I'm a computer science professor at MAHE, Manipal, India. And I'm also a board member, IAESTE, A.s.b.l, and taking the responsibility of secretary of the organization. My eminent panelists today are Professor Hironori Kato, full professor at the Department of Civil Engineering, the University of Tokyo. He obtained his doctoral degree in 1999 from University of Tokyo. He has a rich experience of 20 years at University of Tokyo. He has experienced an IAESTE internship program in Netherlands in 1994. He has been serving as one of the directors of IAESTE Japan since 2014, while he has also supported the activities of IAESTE at the Graduate School of Engineering, the University of Tokyo, as one of the host institutes in Japan since 2003. Second panelist is Professor Mateo Sáenz, BA in International Relations at University San Francisco, Quito. In 2016, he was offered a scholarship to pursue master's degree in Latin American development at King's College, London. After his master's study, he joined the International Program Office team at USFQ and currently works as Director of International Affairs. In 2018, he received USFQ Alumni Award thanks to contributions made to higher education. He involved in Rotaract and served for 1 year as District Treasury for Rotaract 4400. Third panelist among us, Professor Dorota Piotrowska, researcher and an academic teacher at the Łódź University of Technology in Poland, where she also, as the director of the International Cooperation Center and TUL's institutional coordinator of Erasmus Plus program. For several years, she has been a Bologna expert appointed by the Ministry for Science and Higher Education. Since 2020, she has been also an expert appointed by the Conference of Records of Academic Schools in Poland. The fourth panelist among us is Dr. Derek Brazil, senior lecturer in medicine, working in Wellcome Wolfson Institute for Experimental Medicine at Queen's University, Belfast, PhD in the University of ULM in Germany, currently supervising and teaching many scholars in Queen's University, Belfast, trained 14 PhD students, 8 MSc students, and over 70 undergraduate students. He is also Associate Director of Undergraduate Education in the Research Center at Queen's University, Belfast. Established IAESTE exchange program in the School of Medicine, Dentistry and Biomedical Sciences at Queen's in 2019. Developing a virtual summer studentship in widened participation and increased access, and Professor P.N. Kioni, founding Vice Chancellor of Dedan Kimathi University of Technology, is a professor of mechanical engineering. He holds PhD in engineering from Cambridge University, England, and a bachelor degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Nairobi, Kenya. Professor Kioni is a professional engineer with vast experience in the industry and is also the current patron of Council of Deans and Principals of Engineering in Kenya. He has had a long history with IAESTE as he started IAESTE activity in Kenya, and also he has participated in annual conference in 2005 in Colombia. Thank you one and all for accepting our invitation to be partake in this panel discussion. I request Professor Kato to go ahead and put his point to august audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kotegar. Okay, then this is my great pleasure to talk about the story from Japan, Tokyo. Yes, first of all, I'd like to talk about Japan's situations regarding COVID-19. Japan started the first state of emergency from April 2020 to June 2020. And at that time, many universities decided to shift their start of semester from April to several months later. But some universities, including my university, University of Tokyo, decided to immediately start the online program. Please note that the school calendar in Japan starts always from April. And in the University of Tokyo, all classes have been provided through remote teaching using Zoom from April 2020 and even now. There were some confusions and technical troubles at early stages, but most of the classes have been successfully provided through online system. The number of infections decreased in summer once, but later in winter, we have quite a lot of infections, unfortunately. Now we are under the second state of emergencies. And from our experiences, we found some challenges and opportunities of remote universities. Regarding these opportunities, we found that the digital technology could enhance the performance of learning. For instance, even in the class with over 300, 400 participants, we can receive the comments through chats from students with the support from teaching assistants, and which could provide the nice feedbacks from teachers to students, and also they increase the students' motivation to learn. Additionally, we sometimes have opportunity more regarding the reunions with alumni, particularly from abroad, through online system. But on the other hand, we faced several challenges, unfortunately. And one of the most serious challenges for us is mental issues of lonely students. Some students, unfortunately, lost their motivation to studies during the long, lonely conditions. And particularly for new, fresh students, they cannot find good friends at the campus. Even for professors, we may find some difficulties in flexible teaching because we cannot observe the students. So, and also informal communication or chatting are quite difficult using the online system. Therefore, we could not give effective teaching to students. And another important point, which is related to IAESTE opportunity program, is less opportunities of field work. I'm a civil engineer, and experiences in the field is really critical for civil engineers. Without understanding and learning from the field, we cannot do the real engineering work. we try to give opportunity to students understand the reality in the field, but there are some limitations, unfortunately. And regarding the internship, many students in our university gave up internship or postponed their international activities under the pandemic. Some exchange program, for instance, with Japan and the French universities communication have continued, and some students bravely went to France and studied there under the pandemic. But most of the program are not stopped, unfortunately stopped. And instead of that, we try to organize several opportunities for students using online-based system to communicate with other students in other universities, such as Asian neighboring countries, including Vietnam and sometimes Thailand. And finally, I'd like to talk about the financial impacts of COVID-19 on universities. In our university's case, I do not so much details about the financial conditions, but I heard that the revenue has been seriously damaged, particularly from poor revenue from the decline of patients in the university hospital. Mm-hmm. And this has led to a shortage of financial support to PhD students. And many PhD students lost the opportunity to learn, maybe without the support from the universities. And also they lost the chance to earn their daily expenses through part-time job because all activities stopped, and which affected the study at the universities. So we are now discussing about how to support the student to keep learning at the universities under the COVID-19 pandemic. So still we are in the quite challenging situations, but we are trying to overcome the difficulties in cooperation with various stakeholders. That is the situation from me about Japan. Thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you, Professor Kato. Can I request Professor Mateo Sáenz to go ahead with his points, please?
Thank you so much, Professor Kotegar. Hello, everyone. Greetings from Quito, Ecuador. So following the line that Professor Kato was talking about, I think we will be sharing similar challenges. And I will start with the first one. If you haven't had the chance to visit Ecuador, I hope probably next year you'll be able to come. But something unique about this country is the biodiversity, what we'll be calling the natural labs. So if we have the restriction in terms of mobility, even within the country, students could not have that experiential learning component of their curriculum. So that's one of the challenges on how we could work that out. How could we share our biodiversity using technology? Is it something possible or not? I guess that challenge will as well bring opportunities, and one of the opportunities that I see is the new use of technology. So virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, adaptive learning. So how could we use that? And that will as well connect to the financial part. So our university is willing to invest on this? Is the industry willing as well to support university, the government, etc.? So that will be the first challenge and an opportunity that I see. I agree in terms of mental health. That is something important. That's something that has always been important, but I think through the pandemic, we have become more aware of these issues. So what sort of support could universities provide to students? And this will apply to local and international students. So I was reading an article from the Inter-American Development Bank, and they were saying that we have become high-tech, but we should become high-touch as well. So be aware of mental issues that students might be facing. Another challenge that I see as well is related to the evaluation methods. So how are we thinking about getting information from students? How are we going to measure intercultural education when we're talking about the internationalization? And as well, how are we going to measure global competences? So that pull us to one of the second topics as well that we wanted to touch base, which is a bit towards the value of internships. So many industries as well had to adapt, and they might be changing for good now. So how will universities reply to these changes? What is the relationship between the public, the private sector, and the academia in order to be able to give students the opportunity to work on this? And then relating everything to the financial part, as Professor Kato mentioned, there might be some cut in terms of budget. In our specific case, international students enroll at USFQ will bring extra income, so outside of the country, which was really useful in terms of using that money towards research in the future. So if we see reduce number of students involved, international students involved here, we see a potential barrier there. However, looking from a different perspective, studying abroad or doing an internship, one of the main limitations could be a financial part, but having the opportunity to do an internship virtually in Ecuador and then remotely work in Tokyo just gives the opportunity to students that never thought about studying abroad. Looking at it from the academic perspective, the collaborative online international learning, the COIL courses have been really important for us to keep connected and keep interacting with other partners. So this has gave students that were not able to travel and never thought about having an international experience be involved in some way with some of our partners. So that's a bit of what we have seen in Ecuador.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Mateo. Can I call Professor Dorota to present her points, please?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm really glad to be here with you virtually, unfortunately. Greetings from Poland, from Łódź, at the center of Poland. For sure, as my experience, our experience shows, internationalization is certainly one of the areas most affected by COVID. However, as far as my last experience shows, this bad experience can paradoxically strengthen international activities of university, at least some activities of the universities. I, of course, agree with Professor Kato, with Professor Sáenz, that we need to face many challenges. However, as far as I see, well, this is a very good driving force to increase the competitiveness of many universities, because we need to enlarge some activities and our international promotion in order to fight more effectively, to acquire candidates for studies, or to maintain some partnerships on international level. So not only negative points can be seen here, but also some positive driving force can be recognized in this very, very hard situation. As far as I see it, from my perspective, at the moment we have many international students and also many outgoing students from my university, and I see that much more attention and energy is devoted to, well, much should be devoted to persuading students to move, to be mobile. So we had to put some measures to provide students with a full sense of comfort and full security, because as far as we see, it's very very important for our students. What we have to do, we need to reorganize all mobility promotion tools, and we have to implement some new quality and new safety tools. And I do believe that short-term mobility projects will support this mobility, because as far as I see, students are well, they like very much this short-term mobility, and they feel much more safe in that in such opportunity and options of a short-term mobility. So probably, from my perspective, it could be one of supporting or even driving force for the future development and revision of mobility. As far as other challenges not mentioned by my colleagues, I see that we need to, well, there is a need to revise the international strategy of a university. So we need to select, and fortunately at that moment, we need to select some partnerships, and we need to focus on the strategic partnerships to maintain the good quality, to maintain the good relationships with some partners, because paradoxically, virtually, so in some ways it's much easier, but to maintain the real relationship between partners, we need to be in contact, face-to-face contact. So that is why, as far as I see, this COVID also forced us to select, to focus on some relationships, to maintain some projects. And of course, we need to revise the strategy, international strategy of our university. So not only focus on the student mobility, on the staff mobility, but we need to, right now, what we do, we try to set up some short-term projects because we don't know the future. And this is a very challenging factor of our everyday activity, because, well, we base on some estimations, and it is quite complicated and challenging for the international activity of university. So what we did, we changed a little bit our strategy, and we focused on short-term projects, just to have like this small steps approach toward the development of international activity of my university. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Dorota. Yeah, may I request Professor Derek to continue and put his points, please.
Okay, thank you. Welcome everybody. Greetings from Belfast in Northern Ireland. The first item that I'd like to comment on is challenges and opportunities of remote universities. Clearly, we're challenged in the simple fact that it's very hard under the current situation to actually get students on campus. Like my colleagues have said, we're delivering 90% of our teaching online in our medical school. We are still delivering clinical skills and practicals in person, but everything else is remote using Teams. And again, that can be advantageous if students have children or caring responsibilities, but I certainly recognize the challenges that my colleagues spoke about in terms of mental health, loneliness, not just for students, but also for staff. You know, the other barrier that the remote teaching creates is difficulties in international students traveling to our university. We have a campus in China, and Queen's has chartered flights directly from China to bring our students over, and then they self-isolate before they can, you know, engage in their studies. But last year, for example, we couldn't host any IAESTE students. And as a result of that, we've developed a virtual summer studentship called the iEngage program, which I would like to formally invite everyone who's listening and all of your students to apply for. I think one point to make is that the barriers to travel and internationalization don't just affect the students from the different countries that come here. They affect our students on the ground who are enriched by the presence of students from, for example, 2 years ago, Palestine, Ghana. So, you know, there's a challenge there in exposing our students to many others from different countries. On the one hand, you could argue that the challenges relating to visas for students in Iran and Syria and Iraq to come into the UK might be overcome by the fact that the summer studentship is remote. However, online teaching and remote learning creates an additional problem with the ability to access reliable Wi-Fi and also technology. So I think there's some challenges we need to address. In terms of our perspective on internships, our university has recently developed a Vision 2030 strategy, and it's clear that we are going to be favoring undergraduate degrees that have 6 to 12-month placements as part of the degree, either in industry or pharma, biotech, or even some tangential related program, because as our Pro-Vice Chancellor said, the student that goes away for an internship or a placement, when they come back, they are a different student. So they're a better caliber student, but also this significantly enhances their employment opportunities, because if the student is of good caliber, very, very often, and this is, I think, true of the IAESTE program as well, the company in which they've done their IAESTE, their internship, will quite often offer the student a job should they obtain their degree successfully. So I think that, you know, that is a big emphasis on our university going forward. And I think once we get over the present, you know, crisis, I think we will see a strong push towards placements and internships. In terms of the financial impact of COVID, clearly our university relies heavily on international students, and that's being challenged at the moment. And I think what we'll see is, rather than small numbers of students from lots of different countries, I think we'll move more towards a partnership model where we in Queen's partner with 3 or 4 universities and have an ongoing stream of students from those universities to Belfast. And for example, we have partnerships with China Medical University in Shenyang and also Mohammed bin Rashid University in Dubai. And again, there's been transfer of students in both directions to date. So finally, you know, there's a quote from Stephen Jay Gould, who was asked once about Einstein and why Einstein was so smart and why his brain was different to everybody else's. And his answer was basically that he wasn't that concerned about how big Einstein's brain was. He was more concerned with the people who have lived and died in cotton fields and factories all over the world who are as smart as Einstein, but never had the opportunity to do what he did. So I think our challenge as a community is to use this new reality of online remote learning blended with in-person teaching to actually maximize the availability of education in our universities to as many people as possible. So I look forward to discussing with the panel and answering questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Derrick. May I now request Professor Kioni to make his points, please.
Professor Kioni, you are on mute.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to be a member of this panel. And I would like to start by sharing our experience of the COVID-19 pandemic, which was a little different from probably what has been experienced in other parts of the world. The government in Kenya moved the institutions, these academic institutions, to some kind of lockdown way back in March, because before there was widespread spread of the virus. So for that reason, the academic institutions had to shift from in-person teaching to remote teaching way back from 20th March 2020, and have been doing so for a total of 6 months. Now, that has been some kind of grad experiment in leapfrogging the education sector from remote teaching to one where teaching is done remotely. And for us to appreciate the scale of that, it's good to know that 28% of our population lives in the rural areas, and the electricity coverage is actually 50% of all households. And of course, we have quite a number of young people who are attending school. So for that reason, we have a situation where virtually everybody in the country, the students, the lecturers, the teachers at all levels, starting from primary, secondary, technical institutions, universities, have become socialized to using ICT tools to deliver education. That situation changed a little bit when students went back to class for in-person teaching towards the end of last year. The importance of that is that even as we move forward, we expect that the students we receive in the university are actually changed in terms of their expectation. And even our own students who went through that phase already expect that we should continue with a different form of teaching, one that leverages the advantages of online teaching and also makes up for some gaps by providing in-person teaching. So we are currently in that stage of advanced adjustment. As a university, we had an interesting experience because when we were asked to send the students away, we were just 2 weeks from holding our graduation ceremony, and with us had to move very quickly to have a virtual graduation ceremony and meet the expectations of our graduates. We did that, and by doing that, we also contributed to shifting of the way some of these ceremonies are held in the country, and we did in a big way promote the use of these new tools. So the challenges we now have are challenges of infrastructure because we must invest more in the infrastructure around in the university and also in the infrastructure to enable us to reach our students wherever they may be. We also realize that we have to equip our students with devices. The ownership of appropriate devices was only at 67 or 70% of the student population. We have to work out ways of getting that to 100%. And we have programs now. We are working on programs with the private sector and government to figure out how that can be done. And we are doing this also with the association of, with the network of universities. There are some valuable experiences and lessons that we learned from that grad experiment, as I may call it, and that the online teaching, remote teaching has its own limitations. The experiential training has been mentioned by my colleagues in the panel is one area. We did also realize that the group that we deal with is a group that is in the age bracket of 18 to 22, and they do benefit immensely from being on campus. There is a lot of social development that is lost when one just adopts online teaching or remote teaching. So we have to therefore design ways of ensuring that we cover those aspects as well. With regard to the internship, we of course had to reshape the internship, but the position of the university and of the sector is that internship is very important. So we continue to figure out ways of doing that. The international internship was affected in a big way. Our students were making arrangements to take up places at offered at the IAESTE. So that is something that was also lost, but it's something that we feel also is very, very important and something we'd like to continue with. But having said that, we have a very interesting experiment and experience with a student who was supposed to take up internship opportunity in India because the host in India still went ahead and made arrangement for the student to work virtually with the teams in India. And we are looking at that as one way in which we can actually enhance the internship, give opportunities offered at the umbrella of IAESTE, that maybe we can make this opportunity available by also looking at those virtual aspects, even as we combine with the in-person internship. In terms of the financial implication, yes, we have had to make a lot of adjustment as a university and also other universities in the sector in terms of the schedules. So there have been delays in starting some semesters because of the pandemic, and that means also delay in the revenues flowing into the university. So that's a big issue, and we continue to think of ways of resolving that. And finally, for me, is that we also had an interesting experience of our staff who are trapped in other parts of the world. We have some staff trapped in Japan, for example, at Give University. We had others trapped in Germany, but they were able to give their lectures virtually from there. And we are looking at also leveraging that as a way to reach others.
Professor Kioni, can I stop you? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, because I have to manage time also. Thank you. Fantastic points made by all the panel members. In general, everybody agrees that the new normal is also going virtual or remote internships, especially because we are talking here about internationalization of higher education, which is a main part. And we do not know. Today it is a COVID-19, and tomorrow there may be a new virus. Are we really ready? Suddenly, when this pandemic stuck, every one of us, we did one or the other way to engage our students in the universities. Especially in IAESTE also, we have come up with a new program that is called as the remote internship. And this is completely addressed. And also in yesterday's employer discussions, panel discussion, and today's university's panel discussion, we feel that that is the way forward. And I request my panelists to go and touch upon the second round. The points what I want to hear from all of you is regarding what's your
Chairman, we are losing you. I don't know whether
about the modality to handle the remote.
Some technical troubles.
Yeah.
Yes.
I get this first point.
Hello. Yes, I think we have lost our professor. I think he was okay. He is here
He's
again
back
with us. He was about to start the second round, to mention the second round in his speech, but Professor, do we hear each other? Yes, Derek, please.
Yeah, I couldn't really hear a lot of the first point. I just wanted to check with the panel. Was it about developing virtual IAESTE placements or internships? Yeah, okay.
I think so.
And then I think the second point was going to be about technology and access to whether it's laptops or, ironically, reliable Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I think that is one of the quite important points, because as Professor Derek told, some Wi-Fi accessibility, the technological problem is sometimes serious, particularly in developing countries or rural areas. So digital divide is really the big issues. So I request IAESTE's partners to support such a kind of people who may have difficulty to access the internet in developing countries. I'm not sure in what way we can do that, but we should collaborate each other to do that. That is from our experiences. Oh yes, maybe Professor not yet done. Do you have some comments?
No, I definitely agree, and the idea of Wi-Fi poverty is certainly important. It's not just the strength of the connection, but a lot of countries, the Wi-Fi is not available in terms of the strength of the interaction. Some countries, the Wi-Fi is monitored, and it's simply not possible, for example, for us to do a live teaching session in China. We have to record it and make that available to students. So I think, yeah, we shouldn't assume that every country in the world will have the same internet capabilities. And, that to me seems like something that, people like the Gates Foundation and other institutions should really be funding, especially now.
Probably just to add there, another important thing that we should consider is technological device. So we're talking about access to Wi-Fi, but in some cases, families might just have one computer for the household. So what sort of devices as well could we give to these students that potentially do not have access to a computer? So just adding to what Derek and Professor Kato were mentioning.
Yeah, thank you. So somebody was talking about Wi-Fi issues, and I am facing it currently. And I have a dual connection, but still I am facing some issues. One of the important point, what I want to hear from all of you is, is there any other way that, some country, whenever an intern is doing an internship, he is not able to pay it, because when a student is in his own country, international money transfer laws are blocking, the universities or the employer for paying that money. That is the major issue what we are facing. Even though employer wants to pay, but international transfer is the major issue. So what I want to hear from you is there any way that we can address this issue? If you have some experiences or some thoughts, you please throw light on it. Thank you. Anybody can take this question.
I mean, maybe I'll start. We haven't considered that, mainly because with our iEngage virtual program, essentially, in effect, the students will it will be free to engage in this program depending on the financial situation, and we're using the World Bank categorization of the different countries. So it's not a traditional 9 to 5, 8-week type placement where the student would receive a salary. It's simply an opportunity for students all over the world with obviously limitations in internet and computing, to have access to the research that's ongoing in our university. I don't know, going forward, if what the sort of solutions to paying students are remotely, and I think I'd have to defer to our local coordinator, Mary Mallon, on that one.
May I contribute to that?
Yeah, Professor Kioni, please go ahead.
And I contribute to that, given we are one of the few institutions that is participating in IAESTE exchange programs from Africa. So if you are looking for maybe a typical institution in the situation that you're talking about, we would be one. And how we go about that is that we have a lot of international programs with countries all over the world, from Japan to Europe. And there is transfer of money. And the way it is done is that you have to ensure that the institution you are partnering with has proper financial systems. So we start by signing an agreement at the very high level, basically the top leadership of the university, with the partnering university abroad. So in this situation, it's possible for IAESTE to have that mechanism in place, that they work through the cooperating institutions, and that there is an agreement between the cooperating institution and IAESTE that the cooperating institution will be responsible for managing or handling those transactions. We have been doing that with the institutions abroad. It's not a problem. And we do that for research, for other exchange programs. It has worked well. Thank you, Shaman.
Yeah. Professor Kioni, thank you. You have made a right point. But the point, whatever our countries are facing is, it is an employer who is willing to pay. But the law of the land, so that is the issue which is coming in between. And at the same time, I request audience to please put your questions in the chat box so that some of the panel members will answer you. If you have specific question to some professors, you please say that. Otherwise, you can ask general question. I will open it to all other panel members. And every one of us, we felt that remote internship is the way forward. And also, some people are talking about hybrid internship. That means before landing onto a country wherever he wants to do internship, he can start his internship 1 or 2 months prior. And then when he lands there, he can do 2 to 3 months of internship there. So altogether, that will give experience of around 4 to 5 months. And also, some students, they don't bother too much about a scholarship or the stipend or the salary. And they want to work with some highly recognized professionals in the company, or one of the best professors in the university. So that's why we are of the opinion that that option should be given to the student. If a student is willing to work without salary, that option should be given. What's your opinion on that? Anybody can take that question.
That's a very hard question, I would say. Well, what worries me the most in this situation, this is the general decline in labor market demand for competences resulting from international experience and cross-cultural experience. And I think that's a question because, well, I think students, they want to develop their competences. They would like to build up a professional profile also on the international level and cross-cultural level. However, as far as I see is, if there is such a decline in demand for such competences, it will automatically block the motivation from student side. I mean, so what is also important, I think, it's, well, this is like a common discussion with employers, with students, but this globalized world needs some international competences, they still need international experience. And I think that's a big challenge, how to, promote this idea that this international cross-cultural, because as far as I see, students, they can work without, salary, it's not a problem. But they need to see the added value of such activity. So the added value can be new competences, well paid in the future, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to address this? I
mean, I think traditionally, if you hear the word intern, if you think about, for example, in American politics, the implication is that the position is unpaid, that the individual is working to gain experience and make a start on building their network, and the reward will come later. However, I think if we can pay the students and provide some kind of stipend, I think we should. But I do agree that, if high-level professors are willing to take students for a short period of time, and if the salary or the stipend is the only barrier to that being achieved, then I think it's reasonable to ask the student, if they have the means, of course, to forego the stipend. But I don't think I'd like to see that widespread, because there's a danger then that the student gets taken advantage of, and there isn't proper investment in their experience. I think if they're getting paid and they're getting a salary, then I think their supervisor will devote the time towards their training.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Professor Derek. The issue here is IAESTE strongly believes that internship must be paid internship. There is no way that IAESTE can offer an internship where there is unpaid. All IAESTE internships are paid. But now the situation is changing, and we are trying to define something new. And that is what we have debated and discussed in our general conference today. And my IAESTE general conference has agreed to go ahead, but there should be some way that the student should be compensated, even though he is doing on remote internship. And also, one of the panel member, he has mentioned that opportunity to everyone, that is the motto here. Because if you look at a country like India and China, it's a huge, and every student in China and India are aspiring to travel abroad and have international experience for their career. But for them, in order to increase the number of opportunities, because the size. So when you want to increase the number of opportunities, if there is a possibility of, remote internship where, other way student is getting benefited, that the experience and also the, the recommendation letter from that professor that I have worked under so and so will have more weightage compared to getting salary. Yes, I fully agree with Professor Derek, where he mentioned exploitation of an intern should never be allowed. Because that exploitation, of free labor, one should not think that it is a free labor. So that has to be stopped. But at the same time, if a professor is there and he is willing to take, then they should be supported. Anybody wants to say anything on it? Please continue.
So I guess I could just add a bit on what you were mentioning, and potentially it might be a way to solve some ideas that you guys have discussed. But I don't know how much of support could interns give to new ventures, so to entrepreneurs. But I know there might not be a compensation right now, but see whether the policies of the country will allow them to then become have a portion of the company, like a minimum portion of the company or something like that. So they are investing their time now in something that potentially will have benefit in the future. So it might be an interesting trade-off, and it could be a split between categories. So working at a top industry, which still should be compensated, probably working on higher education, depending on the projects, we could see with letter of recommendations or things like that, and then working with startups and see how we could connect with them in the future. So another idea just to leave there.
Yeah.
I really like that idea, and you know, our outputs for the student, we thought a lot about this for our virtual iEngage program. So the students who complete the 6-week program will get a certificate of completion. They will also get, obviously, a reference letter from whichever professor they're doing their research project on. And in the future, if they wish to do an actual in-person IAESTE placement in future years, then we would prioritize their applications. In terms of the challenges about transferring money, one idea just came into my head. Perhaps rather than sending the stipend as cash, we could actually provide a new laptop, for example, to the students who maybe are struggling with a single laptop in a household. You know, we might be able to sort of overcome the challenge of access to technology with the barriers to you know, sort of paying. So rather than transferring the money, it might be an idea to see whether we could just ship a laptop as a reward for the internship. So again, happy to discuss that.
May I?
Yeah, Professor. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. One simple idea is not working hour-based contracts. That's performance contracts or output-based contracts. So maybe the employers may request intern to submit some report, for example, as some achievements. And if it is really valuable, I think that is very good for employers. And also it's quite easier probably for employer to pay the monies for the output. So I think that depends on the style of a contract, maybe. Have you already discussed in IAESTE in the past?
Yeah, that is there already, because you know, most of the student, whoever completes his internship or a project or a job, then he has to submit a report. But again, there are something called as non-disclosure agreement. So he can't disclose everything. That is one more major issue is what people are talking. So having said that, it's a time to, you know, end this session. We all, if anybody wants to make final point, they can take the podium.
Yes, I would like to comment on the payment of internship, if you like.
Please go ahead.
Yes, I've just been reflecting on the idea of promoting unpaid internship, and I thought it's important to share our experience when we promote internship and the IAESTE activities in my university. We take into account that students come from different backgrounds, and we try to organize it in a way that the internship can be available even to students who come from poor backgrounds. And the basic principle has been that when the student goes abroad, they'll be compensated for the work they do, and they are therefore able to offset the cost of that internship. So if we move to unpaid internship, then basically what we end up doing is sending the message to our students that is only those people who are financially aware of who can actually then take up these positions abroad. So for our case, I think I would like to promote the idea of continuing with the paid internship. But beyond that, of course, there is the commitment that comes from paying, that there is value in terms of the work and there is better supervision. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. It's a time to, you know, wind up the session. I would like to thank all panel members, Professor Kato, Professor Mateo, and Professor Dorota, Professor Derek, and Professor Kioni. It's a wonderful session, and IAESTE, A.s.b.l, the IAESTE annual conference organizing team recognizes your effort in joining this session, and your all valuable comments are well appreciated. Thank you very much for your time. See you again sometime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.